Good afternoon and good morning and good evening, and thank you very much for joining us today on our webinar. My name is Luke Bader. I am Director of Membership and Programs at the FAIR Institute, and we are joined here today with our partners Ostrich Cyber Risk for a webinar titled Zero Trust in CRQ, or CRQ in Zero Trust. And I'm excited to have Greg Spicer from Ostrich introduce our speakers today and get started with the topic. Before I hand it over to Greg, though, I just want to go over a quick couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. You will get a link to the recording and to the slide deck about 24 hours after the webinar. I'll also be posting the recording in the FAIR Institute member resource library as well for you to share with your colleagues if they weren't able to attend or refer back to at any point. So as long as you're registered for this, you will get a copy of the recording. I also just want to quickly note that we have a number of events coming up. We'll be at RSA conference next week. We're hosting our third annual Europe Summit for those European members who have joined today in London on June 5th. And then we have our annual FAIR conference in New York City in the first week of November, November 4th and 5th. So if you would like to attend any of those events, all the information is up on our upcoming events website page, or you can reach out for more information on those events. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Greg to get started with the presentation. If you have any questions throughout the presentation that you'd like to ask to the speakers, please put them in the Q&A module, and we will be able to get to as many as we can within the hour. So Greg, I believe I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you. Thanks all of you who are attending. I was just looking at the attendees, and we've got people from all over the globe, so that's great. My name is Greg Spicer, and I am co-founder and CRO at Ostrich Cyber Risk. Thank you to the FAIR Institute for letting us put on this webinar. We're really excited. I'm excited about this. This is kind of a new take on CRQ. I think we've had, ourselves and others have had several webinars about CRQ, but this is something that I'm looking forward to hearing and engaging with. So what I'd like to do is we have a great agenda today we'll share in just a minute, but let both of my colleagues introduce themselves, both Hassan and John. And John, we'll start with you and then go over to Hassan, and then we'll get rolling.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. Yeah, glad to be here this morning for me in sunny Denver, Colorado, or just outside of it. I'm John Linford. I am the Open Group Security Portfolio Director. In that role, I'm responsible for our security forum, which is home to our open fair body of knowledge and our emerging zero trust body of knowledge, among other responsibilities.
Awesome. Hassan?
Thank you so much, Greg, and it's a great opportunity to be here. And I'm Hassan Yassar. I'm actually attending from Pittsburgh. I'm a little bit jealous about you, John, because you have a nice weather always in Denver and Colorado versus in Pittsburgh. We have sunny right now, but who knows what will happen afternoon. Anyways, I'm working with the Software Engineering Institute as part of Carnegie Mellon University. I'm a technical director and also the teaching professor as well as the CMU, then teaching as a graduate courses on software security and also the DevSecOps and DevOps courses. In my job as a technical director, and I'm leading about 45 plus people and shaping the application security under the modern software engineering practices, really try to get a security baked in. That's my typical things we would like to do, and do the researchings and improving the state of practice with respect to application security, which is really talking about the zero trust, AppSec, make it more proactive approach in the cybersecurity domain. And also I'm a vice chair for the Security Forum, working with John and his team on the Open Group as well. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm in Newport Beach, California, just so everyone knows, and it's overcast, okay? So we don't always have sun here. All right, let's get rolling. I've had the chance to work with John quite a bit at the Open Group with our product and so forth. And the insight I think that both he and Hassan will bring today will be really good for us. So this is the agenda, defining zero trust. I'll let you all read the rest. And I'm really excited about this because, zero trust gets talked about a lot. It's up there with AI and so forth. And now with everybody on this call, CRQ is near and dear to our hearts, and the FAIR ontology and all the things that are going on with FAIR. I'm really excited to see how that applies to what both John and Hassan are going to speak on today. So I'm going to be quiet, and I will monitor the questions and maybe add some insight from examples that we might have had as a company at Ostrich with our clients. But other than that, it's going to be up to Hassan and John to lead us and educate us. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'll get us going. So first of all, of course, RSA is next week. It was, at RSA 2020, I think it was, right before everything shut down. That went there, wandered the exhibit hall. My goal was to see how many different definitions for zero trust I could find, because that was kind of right at the beginning of zero trust taking off. At that time, it was really a buzzword that vendors were slapping onto their products. Everybody had a zero trust something or other. I actually walked out of RSA in early 2020 with 2 different books, both called Zero Trust for Dummies, from the same publisher, that could not be more different. So it's a concept that's been growing and evolving.
Yeah.
Fortunately, at the Open Group, we've got a lot of experience with this topic. We're the home to the old Jericho Forum publications, including the original Jericho Forum commandments, which started us down this trend of deperimeterization. Let's see if my buttons work how I expect them to. There we go. Which really is where zero trust gets its foundation as a concept. So at a high level, zero trust is an asset-centric information security approach for modern digital enterprises. In other words, it's what cybersecurity should be and should have been from more or less the beginning. A couple of key aspects in this is that, first and foremost, it's an approach. It's not a tool, it's not a product, it's not a combination of those things. It's a mindset requirement. It's a general strategy to how you actually implement and think about cybersecurity. The other really important aspect here is that asset centricity point. Zero Trust looks at what the assets are for the organization, with data being one of, if not the most important asset for your business to generate value, and embraces that as the core concept for where security is going to go, what controls you're going to implement, and how you prioritize actually implementing those controls. And as I've already said, it requires mindset shift, right? Organizations really like compliance checklists. They like being able to say, I've got that control, I have this control, all of these things are in place, without necessarily thinking about what did that actually do for me. Zero Trust flips that on its head. It requires you to think about what are the controls providing value for. Is the level of security worth it for the control or for the assets that are being protected? And how do I go about prioritizing implementation and maximizing my return on security investment? The other fundamental assumption of Zero Trust is this idea of assumed breach or assumed compromise. It's 2025. Every organization is going to have some sort of cybersecurity breach incident, some sort of data exfiltration. It's going to happen. You probably have a threat agent inside your system as of right now. So you need to be able to function and still maintain business value, still generate revenue despite this. And Zero Trust provides the avenue to be able to actually operate in that state. Cyber risk quantification, on the other hand, and we're going to keep this fairly broad. Of course, open, fair body of knowledge and approach are going to be the ones that you probably reference the most, especially since the Open Group and FAIR Institute, but other approaches work. It, of course, is the application of risk quantification techniques to your organization's cybersecurity risk. So looking at putting in dollars and cents and yen and pounds and pence, whatever currency you want, cybersecurity risk so that it can be discussed in the same conversation as other types of risk that your organization is handling. This requires, just like with other types of risk, with other forms of mathematics, having a consistent terminology and framework for actually describing and discussing that risk. If I'm talking about risk in one context, it needs to be the same as the other person for us to be able to have a meaningful conversation and actually make effective decisions about it. And crucially, that relies on looking at risk as a loss. Trying to add that positive outcome side of things makes this really complicated and challenging. There are opportunities that you might lose out on that you might be able to put in that context, but we need to think about what happens negatively as a result of a breach occurring. Finally, then, probably not a surprise to anybody on this call who's familiar with CRQ, but we need data. And sometimes we're going to have really good data direct firsthand from inside our organizations, and other times we're going to need to rely on subject matter expert inputs so that we can actually make these informed decisions and manage cybersecurity risk at the same level as other risks plaguing our enterprise.
John, if I may chime a few minutes here, if I can. Actually,
Absolutely.
you brought a really interesting approach on the zero trust as the kind of approach, not a tools. First of all, security is not a tool that we buy. I think we're going to go to the bottom of it. Is we don't want, if you're going to do security, think about the cybersecurity in general. It is not a tool. It is requiring an organization and mind shift and understanding. You really brought up a great concept as really mindset shift in organization. But when we do the mindset, I always kind of discuss with my research and as well as students, as well as my practice I do. We do a lot of security all the time. We would like to do, we are doing it, but still we are failing when we look at the reality. And you said interesting thing as well, maybe our organization got compromised, which we don't know about it probably, even though we spend millions of dollars and putting a lot of boundaries, and it's still, we are failing. Something is not right in this equation. If we do work, if we are setting up so much tools in industry, if we are doing a lot of educationals and stuff that we do, still we are failing. Why? My opinion, it's about the risk that we don't know how much we can prioritize. You said about the managing risk is about the risk as a loss. It's really important to tie together. I think takeaway is like, we need to think about risk related. We can prioritize spending millions of dollars for every possibilities as making it more reactive. I know we're going to dive a lot, but I couldn't hold myself because I was in the RSA conference at the moment with you, John. We always look at different definitions, tool, but end of the day, there's a different things we have to do, make it more proactive. Again, we're going to dive in more, but I'm just going to say a few words here to complement what you said. I'm aligned with you.
Thanks, Hassan. All right, so then at a high level, zero trust is about shifting security to where it matters most. Our classic approach, that perimeter approach, you've got your controls at the network and you're just kind of assuming that you're going to keep the bad actors out. The reality is they're going to get through your network and you need to have additional protections in place so that when they get through your network, you're preventing them from getting to the things that they actually want. So you need to shift the security to the data, to the device, to the asset, or as close to them as you conceivably can, so that when one of those things is breached, you're working to minimize the blast radius of that attack. So they're only going to get to one single thing rather than being able to get to that asset and then shift laterally to wherever else they want. And although this sounds counterintuitive, implementing security like this is actually working to simplify it as much as possible. We're not putting additional boundaries and boundaries and boundaries and boundaries. We're not obfuscating for the sake of complication. We're actually making deliberate decisions about which controls we're going to implement, the bundle of those controls that we're going to use that build off of each other and increase protection more than just their sum, and actually make that as effective as it conceivably can be. Security's got a long track record of failing, as you were saying, Hassan. So we also face the challenge of justifying a budget to prevent stuff from happening. So when stuff doesn't happen, we're successful. And it's really hard to then go have that conversation with the business decision maker and say, I have proof nothing happened, give me more money. So by shifting it to the asset, by thinking about this in the value of those assets and then comparing that to the relative risk that may happen when those assets are breached, we now also have the tools to have those conversations with the business decision makers. And over to you, Hassan.
Yeah, so a couple of things, I'm going to a little bit dive into the details is before diving into zero trust commandments. As John said, we have to think about the why is important. Why is really matter to us, because when we look at in general current organizational and enterprises, comparing 20, 30 years ago, even though it's keep agile, keep adding every time, we have three major things we should remember. One is like different organization structures that we are dealing. We have a connectivity problem. we have an extensibility problem, and we have also the complexity problems. So these three things we have to look at very closely. What is really changing in this landscape? Because we have a lot of connected applications and products within organizations. We don't have a classical way. We have a fully network parameterized firewall. Everybody works and comes to the office, and we have a full control with the people in and out and everything else. No, we have many tools available for our workforce, as an example. Even when we build up an application, the application has many endpoints which may not know about the problem. Like one example, everybody maybe you're watching the Netflix as an example, there are more than 1,400 microservices running behind the scene. Put yourself in a situation as a security expert. How do you know all the microservices running in infrastructure? It's a data. Or put yourself in a situation like healthcare as an example. There are a lot of connectivities with many organizations, many endpoints. And it's also extensible for many other areas as well, like exchanging data in between with the services. Maybe the pop services, maybe a pops up messaging service happening behind the scene. Then we have really people are using it using different type of authentications, and we don't want to give single sign. We would like to make it a different authentication. We look at this perspective, it's very complex and very connected, and also the very kind of the extensible for those connectivities. So when we look at that perspective, actually zero trust comes a perfect timing to deal with that problem. We know that there's no way we can make a universe is full firewall. It's impossible. It's impossible because we have a data, even though we're using cloud environment, we don't know where is our data. We don't know. Even the cloud provider, they don't know where is our data in which particular services. If you don't know it, what we can do? So now zero trust is, let's build up the concept. What matters to me? Why is important to me? That's actually driving point. So as the group community, we end up creating a zero trust commandments as what are the areas we can look at. So we came up with the 4 different topics as practice deliberate security. Then what is our assets as by risk? Let's define those security assets. Let's try to define those assets as risky for us. I know the connection, you always think about that, how I'm going to define the risk. That's where the CRQ comes in the picture. We're going to discuss and connect more in the picture. Let's understand why is important to me. As a user, what is important to me? What type of information I have to protect? I'm using the phone every day like everybody else. Which data is important to me in my phone? It really starts thinking as a user, and then think about organizational perspective, what assets is by risk, which one is high risk? Which pictures I don't want to share as an example, which picture I can share it, typical example, And also we have to really validate trust explicitly. So whatever we do, we have to validate every time. Really make sure that we rely on validating, check. We don't want to do the once, but we have to do multiple times as validating. Validation is not always putting a guard to check everything. There's a techniques that we can use that really depends on architecture, depends on network, depends on our control, we can validate it. But while we are creating those validation and assets, we always think about the business objectives because we cannot stop the business. Business has to continue because otherwise, if you lock down the security a lot and people will find a way to get the job done. It's a reality. Like if you put it, like I got an example I gave most of the time, John. When I put a password of 15 characters with all the numerics and then all the components, people are not going to memorize those 15. They're going to write a piece of paper underneath of the keyboard that I saw many times. Yes, we will do, but somehow we have to find a balance, and that balance should enable our business objectives. With this current landscape and workspace, people are using different tools, different devices to get the business done. Because we are racing in the market either impact driven about the cost, or we would like to get the users. So in reality, business has to continue to operate, but we don't want to be a blocker as a security expert. And when I put my application security hat, most of the time security people are blocking application developer as late in the game. You know what happened, John, most of the time, honestly? The developer are finding a way, a shortcut, get the push the application into the production environment, get the job done because they have to align themselves for a business. And I asked the questions when I did the survey a few times, and developer will like to do the security, but they have no time to implement it. Why? Because of security organization or security team, they are not aligned with the business objectives. That's what Zero Trust says. We have to enable the mission. We have to understand what the organization mission looks like. We can implement the right asset-centric controls in it so we can enable a sustainable security. Otherwise, it's not working. We learned that. But why we are not doing it again, we don't approach as asset perspective. We don't approach the why is important to me. What type of data is important to me? Why I have to protect, why I have to spend those things, because that's alignment pieces. So now to get these two things as business alignments and then practice security as asset-centric, we had to understand our organizational culture, and organization culture should be part of it. Like human is part of it. Even though you may say AI is coming up, but at the end of the day, human, we are using it in environments, and we should really think about our culture is in place. Make it accountable, like make sure that people are accountable what they do as the accountable for the practice they are following. And also we have enabled pervasive security is really, and make a discipline integrate into the culture. Like culture is check the emails, verify the sources, and do the continuous training, educate the people. You know, we don't want to put the people go around it, and sharing. Like, this is really interesting. I cannot hold myself again. I'm apologizing, John. Maybe I'm taking a lot of time. Most of the time, security folks are not sharing organization secret architect with internal team member who are the critical for the application product. But hackers knows our organization structure better than our application architect. That bothers me. If adversaries are more knowledgeable about our infrastructure, about our tools, than our architects, because our security folks are saying it's so secret, I cannot share it. Yeah, because somebody knows already your dependencies and libraries, what is happening in your data. They know what type of data is important to you. They know your compliances, and they know all the regulation that you have to be in, but not our architects, not our culture, the team members. We're not working as a team. So we are creating a silo by unintentionally making much more secure. That's the culture we are talking about. And also the tool should really serve to us. We don't want to use the tools to dictate what the people to do. That's another thing we should really think about, the organizational structure to support as a culture, educate, understand, be sharing, be talking each other, be sharing what is really happening so we can be more proactive instead of reactive modes. In hacker community, as we all know, they have a fantastic sharing capabilities than ethical people like us. They're sharing everything. Why don't we share everything? This is an opportunity. We are talking and sharing, but think about organization structure. We should share. This is a cultural pieces that should come from bottom up and top to bottom. As I know we can talk a lot, but let's move on. So eventually we have to make it more agile and adaptive security. So we have to align, because we cannot build up a security as we did years ago and we just wait something happen. No, it's evolving. It's evolving based on the data, based on the tools, based on the controls. We have to be more adaptive because, as I said at the beginning, it's a connected environment we are living in. When it is connected, if somebody's changing their endpoint, if somebody's changing their authentication, their backend services, it's affecting to us. If somebody using a single sign-on for logging to their web page, we have a token we are using it, maybe using a token in backend infrastructure. So we have to adapt our technology, or we have to adapt to the things how we do, so we can embrace the continuous changing. But when we do, we don't want to change everything every time. Now the question is, which one we have to change? Do we have to buy a new tools off the set? Do we have to have a completely new network? That's not feasible. That's the reason Zero Trust says, make it asset-centric. The change that you feel is important. You don't want to deploy the full firewall on an organization. Try it. And maybe you try it in the past, and IT will say, no, don't do it because it's going to mess up everything else. There's no way you can deploy a new firewall while doing a business operation. But you can do some certain changes to be adaptive based on the targeted port, targeted connections, we can change that portion that matters to you. That's about the data-centric as well. I know these are the commandments, and you can get more information from Open Group publications, and it's really great content. Let's continue about how we can implement as an architecture reference. I'm just going to go quickly here. So now these are the commandments. Where can I start an organization? So we can plug into the CRQ shortly. Yes, we're going to start with asset access control with identify our network and then using the policy decisions and find out what data is important to put access control around it. Now, it's a different approach again. So access control, it is limited to server, even though there has to be implemented application context as well. Like, let's say I'm building an application, I'm developing an application, but I'm not buying it. Which data is important to me in my application context? I can put access control within my application, even though we may have a single sign-on, role-based access control, whatever you do. End of the day, as the data owner, I am responsible to protect my data. That really starts as soon as when you have the data comes from users and where you store it. Now we're using a lot of AI or GenAI. It's getting more important eventually who own that, who is using that, for what purpose. Users always think I am using a secure application. That's a user perspective. As an organization, we are reliable and liable for the data to protect the users. User never say about the security, as we all know. We are making an assumptions, but the organization that we think about access control at the beginning. Based on what? We're going to build up a threat intelligence to connect operation. This is really a data pieces. Yes, we build up, but we had to monitor our infrastructure, our ecosystems. So we can collect the data. We can create a defense in-depth an example. We can create an absent systems, our distributed policies. And then we can get in digital information. It's getting much more difficult now in this day and age because, as I said at the beginning, maybe I have an email, I don't know what it is. Maybe you're using some shared resources. I have no control on the data layer, which is infrastructure. Still, I have to protect infrastructure. As we all know, in such cloud environment, there is no deletion as an example. It's always stays, and we are overwriting. So now, when we look at that, we have to think about our operations to feeding back the data because we are changing. That's what the dynamic comes in the picture. We have to change our posture based on what we see it. We would like to see what's happening. We would like to sense those potential problem adversaries in our operational based on which data is targeted. Oh, there is a trend here. Let me go back and find out that trend for this particular data, go and add additional controls as an example, instead of taking down everything.
Hassan, we have a question.
Absolutely.
I don't know if can you see the inbox for the question, or you want me? It's quite long from Dennis.
I can read right now. Yes.
And John, you too.
Yeah, I think we'll get into some of that in the next few slides. I mean, ultimately, we're going to be looking at, as compared and, relying on, the open fair process of comparing your steady state, what do you have currently versus if you make a change, how much improvement do you actually see? We're going to be looking at, if you're implementing the zero trust approach, how much is that loss diminished? And then over time, one of the things that we're also really relying on, and you can see it here as well, is this automation and metrics driven. We ultimately want to be relying on collecting the data that you need for your analyses in as close to real time as you possibly can, so that as things change in real time, you're also getting updated results for the analyses that you're looking at. In terms of specific resilience aspect, we look at things like mean time to identify, mean time to remediate, those kinds of things, and see how they improve. But for specific resilience measures, that I'll say that is something we're still figuring out as it comes to implementing our zero trust reference model.
So I think a few words here, and Dennis, that was a great question, by the way. Thank you. And comparing the reference that you put in the question, like 800-287s and other DoD zero trust references and other, et cetera, as the open group community, we would like to get into the risk. That's the reason we are trying to connect asset-centric approach. They are doing the great, fantastic. I like all the standards. I'm part of the DoD program as well. And we really put the measurements and metrics, what matter to us. That really goes back to the asset-centric approach. We're going to dive a lot, but to identify which asset is important, to look at some metrics for those assets, we need to understand what the risks related relationships are. So we can prioritize and then ask, what matters to me as defining those metrics. There are many metrics and monitoring we can do. But end of the day, as an organization, what are the key values that it's important to me, it matters to me, such as maybe someone's leaking the data, maybe someone's accessing, maybe the size of it, maybe the response. It really depends, because you can get a lot of metrics, but end of the day, which one is important to me? Which one is serving the purpose of a specific particular data and location? That's a really key point. And other things, and last things I have to say here, the bottom of the segment, secure the zones. This basically talk about defense in depth. That's what we should think about, the defense in depth approach on the secure the zones. So we can segregate those and put the layers, and we can put some sensors in it to see what is happening. The sensors depends on what type of data that we have, depends on what type of access we are looking for it, and we can collect those information and measure it in terms of the maybe response, maybe the access, maybe the size, maybe the bandwidth, maybe all these things we can measure it. Let's dive into anything that you want to add, John, here, by the way?
I don't think so. At this point, we do have the
we have more specific, let's say, where we can start, so we can really think about the CRQ shortly. We're going to really start with the direction of strategically. What is our organization mission and vision goal we would like to establish? It's really important. It's maybe generalized security concept. We should think about it. We have to align our business objectives. We have to align our strategic goals and vision. That security should align together. You may think we do, but honestly, what I've been seeing so far, we are more aligned with industry or some others. It is not aligned with our business objectives. It's important because end of the day, we have to spend the resources to make sure we have a security implemented. It also, we have to align ourselves into the compliance as an example. We have to align ourselves what matters to us as an example, why is important to me. This is really a key point to build up our strategy for a zero trust, to understand who we are. If we don't know as an organization who we are, we're just going to buy a tools and say, I'm done. But technically, we are not done, because we may have other things that's happening behind the scene. Remember, the adversaries, they know us. They know our motivation. They know our target. They know our business value. They know our direction. If our security focus is not aligned with our business objectives, something is wrong here. Then second is about operational integrated organization. We have to integrate our products, tools into organization structures. So we have to enable those capabilities as part of organizations. It is either implementing the access controls or think about the culture pieces should be aligned with the organizational capabilities, and we're going to put organization structure that works together. Doesn't mean we're going to create a totally different environments and totally different teams. We don't want to create a silo for a specific dedicated team. And we always say that security is everybody's job. When we say everybody's job, everybody is responsible for some organization, but their roles is changing. So we have a study, actually, we are working right now as an open group community. We are defining what the roles and responsibilities are with the security mindset thinking. And then that's really important to define more proactive approach. Lastly is about the operating models. We have to monitor and adjust. That's really agile and then iterative approach comes in the pictures. We have to really monitor and adjust. How are we doing? Are we doing well? Are we the right target? That goes back to Dennis' question about the metrics. If I'm collecting data, if data has no usefulness for us, how can I improve myself? These are the things we can define the data and metrics to improve our security posture, our zero trust implementation. How are we doing well? The measurement that we put in place, are we able to protect our assets? Is there any leakages happening that we don't know about it? Maybe somebody's in our network. How I'm able to identify those attacks and I'm able to protect it? How much I did it so far that I can put a value is important to me, as the value is a cost. So if we see something is not right, we can go back and look at the principles and policies and improve it or add it and adding a new context in it. Maybe we, as an organization, we open up another space and somewhere else. Now we adapt ourselves with the IP locations next, and maybe geolocations. Maybe we're buying new tools. Can we buy new tools for organization? How is it going to affect to us? How can we educate those people? So these things is really becoming as part of our work, and we can monitor, adjust it. It's kind of a continuous process. Start with the strategic, integral organizations, and look at the monitoring and go back and see what is really missing. Again, vision may change or mission may change as well.
Perfect. All right. At this point, we're actually going to dive into changes required for both Zero Trust and CRQ as you're trying to implement them in your organization. We're going to go through people on this slide under the guise of organizational cultural changes, but as well as changes to processes and technology. So I'm going to throw up the ones for Zero Trust and let Hassan talk to them, and then I'll go through the CRQ side of things for each of these three aspects and see where crossovers, similarities, or connections occur.
Yep, thanks. So as we said at the beginning, Zero Trust, we're going to make some assumptions as the failure things happen. We're going to assume the success as well. Something fails, something success. Let's make those assumptions in place. When you make an assumptions, in old days, we were making an assumption for a whole network. It's too risky. That's the reason we are putting a lot of firewallings and fence around it. Now, with this asset-centric approach, we will say, somebody using my API, that API may be open and somebody was able to get into my specific particular server, that server can access my network, which is a failure case. So that's basic assumption. We could think about things may happen. If that happens, what are the next level that we should do, which is zone approach? John, you're going to go one by one or just going to go all together? Maybe we can.
I'll let you talk through all of the Zero Trust ones first.
All right. Again, we are trying to make more interactive, sorry. So we can make it a simplicity, like we can define an active role our security team communication, like make it simple. And make it simple means sometimes if you make it so complex, people cannot navigate those complexities. And make it simple for our team communication and then make it a security champion. This is really important to build up a culture. And let's see who are the team members either building an applications or using it. And right now, honestly, somehow every organization are building some sort of an application and infrastructure because everything's automated now. In almost every organization we do, somehow they have automated provisionings using the scripted or a code, or we adapt our infrastructures as automatically provision, automatically standard and stand up or changing. It's all cannot manual anymore. It's more scripted. So now when we have scripted more about the coding, maybe we are building an application, maybe using a low-code, no-code environment. Somehow we are building an application for our organization structure, even though you're buying somewhere else, because you have to monitor it, you have to look at the bill of materials, all the components. With that perspective, we have to build up as security champions. This is really important to build up the concept of the champions, like who are the people are really good about security? Who are the people in our organization are supportive of our security team and operational team? Mathematically, as a security team, we are very less comparing the rest of organization, the roles and responsibilities. Like even the software engineer concept, we have about 23 million software engineers in the world. We have roughly about 2 million security experts. When we look at AppSec persons, very less numbers. So now to build up the culture, we had to build up a championship programs, promote it, educate it, give some badge, a couple ideas. Then Zero Trust is about the continuous journey. We cannot say I have done today, everything is perfect. Nobody can guarantee it. Security is a living thing. With that concept, when we say security is a living thing, it may change. When it change, but the motivation may change. Maybe the political things motivation will change. Maybe the organizational tool will change. Maybe the vision will change. When there's a change that happen, how much able to adapt ourselves for these changes? Maybe new techniques will come up. How much quicker we can get the new tools instead of using outdated tools? How much we can work as a team approach of this journey? This is really an everybody's job. It's easy to say everybody's job, but sometimes we don't really do everybody's job. We are still siloed. So based on the Zero Trust implementing, the culture is important to some assumptions. Things can go wrong. Make those assumptions, make it simple, and work as a team. Then I'll hand over to you, John.
Awesome. Thank you, Hassan. Yeah, so as Hassan's really just emphasized here, implementing Zero Trust is, as we said right at the very beginning as well, it's a mindset shift. So is implementing CRQ. Getting organizational buy-in is not an immediate thing. Maybe you're lucky and part of that one or two organizations that have immediate implementation. Suddenly everything is quantitative. More likely you're fighting to get quantitative aspects into the analyses you're already performing, trying to get decisions made with those quantitative values rather than subjective measures. So as part of that, zero trust as this information security approach, cyber risk quantification as a technique to support that, the two can go together really well with CRQ supporting the decisions that you're making for zero trust. Just like with zero trust, CRQ does have a couple of assumptions behind it. The first is that prevalence of data. In order to do the analyses, to do them with objective data, we need to actually have data. Something that we're always fond of saying is you have more data than you think you do. You likely have a lot more data just inside your organizations on the breaches that have happened, on how long you've been able to maintain functionality, to continue being successful in maintaining business value despite a breach. So you're going to just need to find where to look for those. And hopefully, if you're streamlining, simplifying your security as part of a zero trust transformation, you're also documenting where you might be collecting those data. Likewise, we need consistencies in descriptions. If we're going to be describing assets in a zero trust approach, if we're going to be prioritizing them based on value or based on the risk that is exposed through them, we need consistency in how we talk about them and how we actually go about protecting them. And CRQ, the open fair taxonomy, provides a very strong way for doing that. That is relatively straightforward to implement once you've got the terms remembered. We also need that objective view. Zero trust really looks at making security practical, making it as simple as possible. We need that objective view as well for CRQ. We need to avoid these subjective value measurements. With zero trust, we're looking at what is this asset actually worth to us. It can't be a lot. It's got to have some sort of dollar value attached to it. And CRQ provides the other side of that to say, okay, how much are you now willing to spend to protect it? Because we know it's going to be breached, so how do we prioritize what we put around it? And just like with zero trust, we need security champions. You're not going to have a CRQ expert as part of every single team throughout your entire organization. Your marketing team might not need to care about CRQ techniques as much as we do, but they need to have somebody who can step in and say, hold on a second, guys, we probably should get somebody from security in here. We need to have a conversation now rather than later so that we can move forward more quickly rather than being told, no, stop, start over. So again, shifting that aspect from security from a prohibitor to instead being an enabler for business value. And of course, finally, CRQ is also a mindset shift. We need a singular definition of risk. And this is one, even in the security forum, in the open group, this is one that is consistently challenging. People like risk as vague and broad and inconsistent. They like the comfort of being able to say, oh, that introduces risk to us, and not need to then back up what that actually means. Whereas instead, if we've got that tight taxonomy, if we've got consistent descriptions, we know where we're going to be looking for these data, we now can actually have a conversation of what threat agent is causing what loss to what asset. Okay, yes, we are agreed there is risk. And now we can actually do something with it. Likewise, with zero trust implementation, for CRQ implementation, you also do tend to need broad organizational support. At least in the security team, if everything's going to be done quantitatively, you need groups of people who agree that it's going to be done. And hopefully you've got higher level support for this as well, ideally getting up to your C-suite or to your board of directors who start asking for these cyber risk analyses to be presented quantitatively. And of course, that brings us all back down there to the bottom. Security for both zero trust and CRQ, it's a team sport. You're gonna have to be going to different teams, different people in different parts of your organization to find the data, to get the inputs, to get your subject matters to provide, or subject matter experts to provide calibrated estimates for stuff where you can't find firsthand data. And likewise for your zero trust implementation, we're going to be touching all parts of the organization. Everybody has some sort of security consideration in their job. Threat agents are going to find a way to exploit everybody if they can, right? We see all sorts of varied levels of degrees of sophistication for like phishing emails for people who say, I'll never have to worry about security. suddenly the email they got in their inbox is the reason for the massive breach that's made the news. So there are a lot of similarities here where if we can embrace them together, hopefully that leads to more successful implementation for both.
So taking from here, and actually what we have been seeing so far, it's really working together. We cannot have a zero trust without having a risk associated. We cannot think about the risk without thinking zero. We're going to come back at the end. So now let's talk about the process changes. What is really process is important for both perspectives. Zero trust, we have to shift security left. This concept is really important to grasp as the proactive approach. So we don't want to be a reactive anymore. We would like to be more proactive. We should think about it. That's kind of it comes for the first things as the challenge that we discuss about the cultural, make an assumption. Assumption, things can go wrong. It's a normal. When it can go wrong, when it is compromised, am I ready? What things I have to do early to prevent those breaches and then problems that things happening, which is a shift left concept that we should plan of those security considerations and monitoring or creating the architectural pieces or authentications or even data is important. We have to do in design phases. I'm really glad to hear that finally OWASP 2021 listed as the secure by design as the one of the vulnerable is listed. So now if you don't design it, it is going to cost much more of money down the road if you don't have a security included in design. If you don't have it built as part of security, as an application we build, has to be in it, because otherwise it will be difficult to patch or update it. It takes time. And also we have to think about education responsibilities. Like, as John said, if I am working with data, I may not know a solution or the things that I have to deal about it. Why don't me, as an asking for that person is responsible for the risk and connect my data? If I am working and building an application, why don't me, as an asking, who is my compliance auditor? Let me ask and work with that person as a team support. But this is a little shift left thinking at the beginning as the person who are architecting, who are acquiring. Let's ask those information. Like we have been talking bill of materials for years, right? Finally, it's a mandatory things, but the acquisition departments should think about what things I have to ask when I acquire a software. If I'm a person and says I need those tools to buy it, but if I don't share information with the acquisition team member to put the requirements for SLAs and SBOM, how are you going to get those informations? And you'll say, why didn't you ask it? Because I never asked that question. These are the shift left thinking from the beginning of the process. Maybe the buying it, maybe designing, maybe implementation. And how can we do it? Goes back to the cultural pieces. And think about as an organization team member, who is my stakeholders that I need to know, or I have to engage with them for a particular security decision has to be made, which is shift left thinking. It's about forward lean thinking that we should do. It's a cultural shift. It takes time, but always we have to remind ourselves, what if scenarios, what if based on the threat model, what if these things is going to happen, things may change in the futures. So now we need to connect those into the business as a security connection. So we have to align with the metrics and policies that we discuss about the questions, really understand what business objectives are. What's our key success? What's our OKR? What's our key things we are measuring our business? What's our risk that we can tolerate for a particular server outage? Then if we are able to quantify with the numbers of particular servers outage, that's the costing organization. Our organization will put right planning to protect those servers particularly, which basically a dollar associated. There's always question security domain. We always say, what is enough is enough. Really is enough means how much I can put security controls and testing in my infrastructure. It really based on my business. It really based on my business objectives and metrics and I have to do. Lastly, we're going to integrate our security into our organization. Business and technicals and human is part of it. Like if I am defining the particular technical problem, what is the result as an impact for the business? then we can quantify and justify our needs for a business impact. If there is no business impact, then why I care? It goes back to the risk definitions, probability and impact. That's what the probability says. What is the impact for organization? Maybe the big risk. If there is no impact, why I'm going to put my prioritization for a particular implementation. That's exactly Zero Trust says, build up a business and technical environment to address security context. So let's connect the CRQ with John.
Perfect. So building, right off of that and sort of following with this human experience being paramount, Hassan touched on it earlier as well. If you make security hard to do for the people who don't otherwise care about it, they're gonna ignore it, or they're going to find ways to get around it rather than doing what they should do. So getting that cultural aspect still part of that. Likewise with CRQ, if we can get the concerns addressed early on, it'll make it much easier later on when we're actually running the numbers, doing the analyses, to connect them back to where those concerns originated. So likewise with Zero Trust, we're taking that asset-centric approach. We're identifying what our assets are early, and that might actually be more challenging for some organizations than others. Some have really good lists of what their assets are. They know where they are, and they know who is responsible for them. Other organizations find assets when they make the news because a breach has happened. Suddenly data have been exfiltrated that they didn't know that they were storing somewhere that they shouldn't have been. So we also need to be thinking about that from this analysis perspective, getting this from the very beginning and identifying as well who's responsible for the risk. When a breach happens, whose team was that a part of, who's responsible for maintaining those data, who's responsible for protecting those assets, and critically, and this is something we also touch on in the commandments, Zero Trust commandments, security shouldn't be punitive, right? People who get this training, who go through these processes, who are maybe not experts, shouldn't be punished because they do things wrong. It should be given as an opportunity to learn more. Likewise, with our moving toward a quantification approach, we have the opportunity to have these conversations, get them thinking about the quantitative approach from the beginning, and hopefully finding an easier way for them to communicate what those concerns are in a way that can later actually have analyses run against them. Likewise with CRQ, something that having this quantitative approach is really good at is connecting business value to your potential loss. We're putting both in dollars and cents. Businesses are already really good at quantifying the value of their assets. We, on the quantitative risk side, can now provide the other side of that equation so that we can be comparing dollars to dollars, yen to yen, pounds to pounds. And we can actually now think about how much am I really willing to spend to protect this? And if it is breached, how much would I lose? So now we can actually have a better conversation about prioritizing how we do the protection. Finally, CRQ can benefit from the improved telemetry that Zero Trust offers. Zero Trust really relies on automating data collection and reporting as much as possible. We want to be prioritizing based on those data, which means that if our risk analysts can tie into these processes, figure out which data are relevant to them and what they're going to be using for the analyses and assessments that they're running, we now have a great source and a great ally for near real-time data that we can use to actually update our assessments regularly. And of course, for both of these, both Zero Trust and CRQ, we need results based on evidence. If we're not seeing the protections provide value, if we're providing analysis results that are showing that a resulted loss is substantially less than we thought it was going to be, or way more than we thought it was going to be, we can now pivot and adjust our protections accordingly. Just being cognizant of the time for our last couple slides here.
Right. We are running out of time. See, that secret is always fun to talk, isn't it, John?
Oh, yes.
It's always. So let's talk about the tech changes perspective, and then within a couple of minutes. So with the technology pieces, when we look at Zero Trust, we have to adjust our access. That means we have to evolve and changing access control based on assets. And we have to do basically just-in-time access for a particular. How we can do it, again, we have to implement it, proper network infrastructure. We have to implement proper data segmentation. We have to plan those things up front so we can implement the access control adjusting based on the needs, based on the organizational needs, based on the opening up of new roles, new team members, or new organization structures, or new location. we have to be open those changes and quickly adapt those because we are running with the business. This is basically goes back to the business vision and mission again we discussed at the beginning. So tech should support those adjustments. To do that, we have to think about the full life cycle consideration that we have to monitor and testing constantly. This is another assumption thing may happen, but we have to learn before the adversaries are doing something against to us. Even though if we have a failure or something is happening, we have to learn earlier than anybody else. We don't want to get surprised. Somebody say, hey, son, you have something in your network, and then somebody's taking out. That surprised me. We don't like surprises in the security world. Surprises means it's already done. Damage is already done. To eliminate that, we have to monitor and testing constantly to learn, be proactive. I prefer to learn by myself and correct it instead of somebody else telling me what to do. It's already damage done. So how to do? Think about the full life cycle of everything. What we do. Everything means particular server instance, particular data to define end-to-end. How are we getting data? Where are we storing? How are we disposing? Which is another one. We dispose of data. Sometimes we don't know where it is. That's a basic life cycle, which is the sacred operation. And at the end of things, we think about life cycle end to end. We get the data, we used it, monitor it, and store it, and then dispose it. Disposing is pieces that we're going to make sure everything's properly. There are a lot of stories how organization failed on the last mile of disposing data. So going back, asset-centric control is the key criteria for a zero trust implementing infrastructure layer, and also the networking, also to build up a secret operations center on top of it.
Awesome. CRQ then for tech changes. We need tools. We need, for instance, tools like what Ostrich Cyber Risk provides for actually running your quantitative risk analyses and being able to tie that back into your broader enterprise risk management. We need to connect those tools to our data generation, ideally as close to real time as possible, thanks to the implementation of our zero trust, and connect that into our threat modeling techniques, to the inventories of our assets and owners, and also feeding into what hopefully can become more quantitative risk registers so that we've got a singular source of data to go consult to actually run our quantitative analyses. We also then can support reporting and compliance. Our reports are now based on implementation processes that connect the quantitative aspect to the zero trust side of things. And we have this audit on demand ability. We're relying on these real-time data so that if, I don't know, you have something that requires an SEC materiality breach notification, we now can get these done very rapidly rather than having several week or several month timelines to complete an audit for this assessment. Ultimately, the goal is getting your risk management integrated. By taking this quantitative approach, by partnering with your peers who are implementing zero trust, who are connecting all of this back up to the business and the value that your assets generate, we're connecting cyber risk into broader enterprise risk management and getting cyber risk at the table with other risks that are being discussed. And of course, we don't really have time to get into the supply chain side of things, but that is absolutely something that you need to think about, both in terms of the providers selling you things, the customers that are using your products or tools, but also, as Hassan was mentioning, with the life cycle of data, the supply chain of data, and where those are going as well. So putting it all together here at the end, is there zero trust in CRQ? No, absolutely. No. Absolutely not. Instead, we need to be relying on getting CRQ as part of your zero trust transformation. We're looking at changes throughout the entire organization. We need more rapid prioritization for how we manage those protections. We need consistency and coherency for all security decisions being made, and we need to tie back to supporting our business objectives and decisions. And what better time to implement these than with the mindset shift that is already coming as a part of your zero trust transformation.
Excellent. You guys made it with 1 minute. There were no, I think this, is listening in on this, obviously it's a new view for, I think, people who have been doing risk quantification and all the things that go along with that. The one question I would pose to you kind of as we close this out, and obviously, let's go to the next slide. If you do want to get in contact with any of us, here's some information with questions. What do you suggest if, what's the easiest way to get started down this journey? Like you said, there is no zero trust in CRQ right now. What's the easiest way, if there is such a thing, to get adoption, at least to start down this path, if you are a enterprise that is using or doing CRQ right now?
I think the security champion approach. Get friends on other parts of the organization who know that they can come to you with questions and you can support what they're trying to do. If you get people comfortable coming to security rather than afraid of coming to security, it's going to be much easier to make other changes.
I would like the same thing, and Greg, what John said. I would add also if you are the risk person that you know your organization data, or you are quantifying, please put yourself, who are the maintainer of data, who are the producer of data, where data is stored, go reach out those people and introduce yourself. Don't wait people don't come to you. It's too late. That's basically shift left up approach. That's basically, we are saying the culture. Somebody's implementing an organization. Please raise your hand. Say, I'm a risk person. I know what data I have to prioritize. I know what is the impact. Go talk with these people. If you're a zero trust team, you're implementing, don't decide by yourself. Go find that risk team. Go find that compliance. That's basically communication. It's really, really important to be communicative and open. That's all you want to say.
Thank you. Thank you. John, Hassan, thank you so much. FAIR Institute, thank you. If you are interested in learning more or any questions, please reach out to us. If you are interested in seeing our product offering at Ostrich Cyber Risk, please reach out to me directly. I'm happy to schedule a quick demo with our team to show you some of the things we're doing in line with what everyone we talked about today, among other things that our product does, both from a control framework standpoint and, of course, the FAIR taxonomy within the application. So with that, thank you again for attending. We appreciate it. I am going to look at these other questions, and we will get, it looks like, Dennis, you have a couple, and please reach out to the team here, and they'll be happy to answer those. But thanks, everyone, for attending, and wherever you are in the world, have a great day or a great evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody.